Welcome. The Wharton Team-Based Discussion is not a traditional interview. It's a leadership stress test, one designed to expose how you think, how you lead, and adapt under pressure. Most high achievers approach it wrong. They arrive with rehearsed talking points and oftentimes defensive posture, trying to win the discussion. The problem is, Wharton isn't looking for the best idea. They're looking for composure, emotional intelligence, and strategic awareness. So that is what we're going to talk about today. We'll deconstruct what Wharton is assessing, why polished profiles can absolutely fail, and how to approach the TBD with nuance and adaptability that top candidates demonstrate who gain admission. So let's dive right in. Before you start thinking about the tactics, you need to understand the architecture of the Wharton TBD, because the structure itself is the actual test. So the session lasts 30 minutes. So the Wharton team-based discussion itself lasts 30 minutes. After that, you deliver your 1-minute pitch. So the 1-minute pitch is not captured in a 30-minute discussion. You then begin your live 20-minute group discussion. That's where every behavioral data point is collected in terms of how you're being evaluated. So you are in a room with 4 to 5 other candidates just like you who have been invited to interview. And most of the time there are 2 moderators, although sometimes there have been 1, especially if an admission representative. Once the session starts, they are entirely silent. They do not engage whatsoever during your team-based discussion. They're watching, however, for patterns and not necessarily content. So this means who initiates, who builds, who derails, and who restores order. The final 5 minutes of that 20-minute, like of that 30-minute, actually the final 10 minutes is broken into 2 segments. 5 minutes is to sort of reassess and make sure that everyone knows what part they're going to play in the other 5-minute presentation that you deliver to the moderators in the room. Essentially, think of this as a project debrief in terms of your 5-minute presentation to the moderator. So immediately afterwards comes the 10-minute one-on-one interview. One of the moderators, especially if they're 2, they'll be broken into 2 groups. If there's 1 moderator, everyone will take their turn. So the moderator will probe for reflection during your one-on-one. They're testing if you understand what just happened, not just your idea, but really the dynamics. Everything in this structure of the Wharton TBD, and we're going to dive more into each part, is intentional. Wharton wants to see whether you default to control or collaboration when the framework disappears and you are in a room of individuals you absolutely know nothing about. So now, the TBD isn't an intellectual exercise. It's really about a behavioral experience. Wharton designed it to strip away the comfort of rehearsed answers and expose your leadership reflexes. So like, what do you go back to when that framework isn't there? Admissions already know you can perform, because to get an interview means you have competitive GMAT scores, competitive GPA, and the resume that captures, and an application, of course, that captures the caliber of candidate that they're looking for. What they don't know is how you think when that structure collapses, because obviously your application, you're not gonna, work on it for 5 minutes and submit it. This is really where, in the Wharton TBD, is really where they see you sort of unfiltered. During the discussion, they're observing how you enter a conversation, how you respond to friction, how you recover from interruptions, and how your energy affects other individuals in the room. So what you're selling in that room isn't your idea. And it's really important for anyone watching this, whether you're here live or watching it as a replay, to keep in mind. It's not about how brilliant your idea is. It's about your executive presence under pressure. Can you synthesize fast? Can you disagree without defensiveness? Can you help a fragmented team reach clarity when time is running out because you do not have a lot of time? Those moments are really the real evaluation. The strongest candidates aren't the loudest, don't have the greatest idea, but they are the most regulated and situationally aware in those rooms. Everything Wharton measures rolls up into sort of these 4 behavior pillars. One is leadership under ambiguity. When there's no roadmap, can you create structure? That doesn't mean controlling the group and telling everyone what to do. It means clarifying directions when others are hesitating. The second is influence without dominating the room. Real leadership in a 20-minute conversation is subtle. You shape the flow through phrasing and tone, not really volume and constantly talking. Candidates who over-assert to prove leadership usually are going to lose control of the room, and it will be very evident in those subtle cues. Third is listening as strategic awareness. The admission team look for people who process information, not just hear it, essentially. Integrating other people's points and re-anchoring the discussion shows intellectual agility and respect, 2 of Wharton's cultural values. And then authentic engagement. The TBD really is going to expose you within like 1 minute of being there if you're approaching it from a fake collaboration approach. The TBD forces enthusiasm, artificial compliments, rehearsed transitions. They all are going to sound mechanical. What works is being really calm, thoughtful during the entire discussion. And because that is going to make you feel credible. So one piece of advice that I would give anyone going through the Wharton TBD is to make sure that you show up in the room 15 minutes before, take deep breaths to calm your anxiety, your nerves, because that is absolutely normal. Everyone experiences it. But you need to be sort of grounded before you show up in this room, because you will not know anyone in the room yourself beforehand. So if you internalize these 4 pillars, you're going to stop operating the way Wharton leaders operate, which is having the confidence, being concise and self-aware in the context of a group dynamic. Ironically, the candidates most likely to fail are the ones who over-prepare, right? But I don't mean over-preparing and internalizing your preparation, but over-preparing from the scripted preparation. They're going to memorize sort of how to open, how to transition, even lines like, I like to build on your idea. Under stress, these scripts absolutely are going to break. You may forget, because that's not something that you are, especially if you're not accustomed to operating in this way. And this is why the session is so short, because you are trying to do and juggle a lot of different things at the same time. Over-dominating is the second. They speak too long, interrupt, or defend their concepts like a debate round. This is one of the greatest mistakes anyone can make and I consistently say this to everyone that is going through the Wharton process, do not debate your idea. It absolutely does not matter. What matters is your leadership and how you collaborate with others, because these are just sort of ideas in terms of how you would solve a problem, not necessarily something that's going to be taken and integrated somewhere at Wharton. So, if you take anything from this session, I want you to take that. Do not debate your concepts, especially if your team does not agree with it. On the opposite end, we see overhedging, people who silence themselves to look cooperative. They vanish from the dynamic entirely because they feel like, oh, I'm going to wait to give the best idea towards the end, and they lose traction, they lose engagement. Wharton is actually not also assessing politeness. Obviously, you have to be professional, right? But they're actually assessing your contribution in a team setting. And finally, there's the issues of signal blindness. I cannot tell you how many times I see this through our Wharton simulation when applicants miss tone shifts, micro expressions, or energy drops. The best leaders are constantly scanning the room. If someone disengaged, they draw them back in. If tension rises, they diffuse it. That's what you have to show. The successes of individuals that I have seen succeed at Wharton are the ones who absolutely avoid all of these missteps that I mentioned in this slide. So come back to this once you have your interview. So let's talk about the evaluation grid the moderators use. So first is interaction quality. Every comment you make is rated on clarity, brevity, and contribution value. Are you adding new insight, recycling what's been said? And Wharton absolutely prioritizes and prizes being precise with your language. So if someone says something that you agree with them, and all you do in terms of your contribution, in terms of your discussion, is just regurgitate what they said in different words, that's not adding value. Second is leadership signals. They listen to your tone, your rhythm, and your pacing. Do you take space deliberately, or are you rushed and anxious? Leadership from the Wharton's perspective, it's really composed throughout the entire process. And then team impact. Admission officers are trained to watch for micro reactions. Do others lean in when you speak? Do they echo your framing later down the line? That's really influence. So if people shut down, they're kind of moving on from your commentary, that is absolutely going to send the wrong energy signals to the moderators. And then adaptability, which is the ultimate differentiator. Can you recover when the discussion veers off course? Do you recalibrate with composure the team to come back to sort of the equilibrium of where you need to go? Absolutely hugely important in your ability to succeed in the Wharton TBD. Moderators synthesize all of this after your TBD, and the candidate who rises to the top are the ones who really quietly stabilize the group dynamics. So they're not going to be the loudest. It's not going to be someone in your face. What they're doing, it's really moving the team along and getting to the end of the 20-minute discussion so that they can present and give that debrief at the end to the moderators. So here, let's talk about how the top performers optimize those principles. So you want to anchor early. Take initiative within the first 3 minutes of your discussion. Not necessarily to pitch your idea, because you have already pitched your ideas in your 1-minute pitch, but to clarify scope. So something like, we have 20 minutes, maybe we can structure this into problem, solution, and next steps, or whatever the prompt is for this year, given that it's not going to be released until the 22nd of October for this application cycle. So that structure, clarifying the scope, really organizes the team in making sure that everyone is anchored in what you all collectively need to do, right? So you're not veering off to just chit-chatting and coming up with the best idea, okay? Second, they reference others. Use connecting language. So building on Arjun's point, and then you build on it. You don't just repeat what Arjun had said, for example. And this is to demonstrate active listening, that you are paying attention to everything that is going on, and positions you as integrative, as someone who is really looking to come together to build the best idea you can in a 20-minute window. And the third is synthesizing mid-discussion. Every 6 to 8 minutes, summarize progress. So say something like, we seem to have 3 directions emerging. Let's converge into one, especially if that happens. Or synthesize, where you are as a team. This ability to synthesize really is going to present yourself as someone who has leadership capability and ability to move a team forward. And then lead transitions. Move the team fluidly from brainstorming to decision making. Everyone can have amazing ideas, and this can become a week-long project, but you only have 20 minutes. So you really have to get to the decision of what makes the most sense within the time frame that you have been given. Time awareness, it is a leadership trait. And then mirror energy. If tensions spike, lower your pace and volume. But if momentum drips, you have to re-energize the tone and the group, right? Emotional calibration is absolutely an invisible leadership trait, but it's really important to make sure that everyone is motivated and moving forward towards the outcome in terms of where you need to go. So remember that your goal isn't airtime. It's having the ability to orchestrate everything you as a team need to do. The candidates who really control the tempo are going to have the greatest impression from the moderator's perspective in terms of the ability to succeed at Wharton. So now, immediately after the TBD, you'll meet one-on-one, if there are 2 moderators, with one of the moderators, or just the moderator who is watching this entire experience. And this is a 10-minute interview. The conversation is actually quite short, and people think that, oh, you don't need to prepare for this, but you actually do. Now, you have to remember that the moderator was in the room, and what happened, they know exactly what happened in the group. They're now assessing whether you understood why it happened. So expect reflection questions as soon as you join that one-on-one session. So questions like, how did your team reach consensus? What did you notice about your own contribution style? If you could do it all over again, what would you have done differently? Those kinds of reflective questions. And you have to know how to assess situation, especially given that you would not have rehearsed the session beforehand. So you don't have a lot of time to think through that process. So strong candidates use this moment to demonstrate emotional intelligence, acknowledging tensions, giving credit to who you think is deserving of credit, and also showing growth, that there is an opportunity to learn. Avoid relitigating your ideas. Focus on learning, adaptability, and why you do what you do differently next time. And obviously, you also have to come in with prepared with intelligent questions that are additive to the information you already received from your conversations with students, alumni, admission events that you have attended. So don't show up with questions that are elementary, because that that has direct correlation to your preparation and your ability to be a strong candidate at Wharton. So just a quick case study to illustrate sort of how we were able to make a shift in someone's natural approach during our, Wharton TBD preparation. So this client was a consultant. He was very articulate, analytical, but initially a little bit rigid in terms of their approach. So in the mock TBD, he really dominated early, cutting in with frameworks and bullet logic that are very popular in the consulting space. While the content was excellent, his effect was actually alienating because he wasn't really building consensus in this process. He was essentially telling everyone what to do. So we retrained him to approach leadership as an orchestrator. He practiced letting others speak first, then summarizing. It sounded like we have two strong themes. Perhaps we can combine them into whatever the idea was, right? That single behavior shift reshaped and reframed his how he approached the Wharton TBD, showcasing him as someone who is collaborative and definitely confident in a room with other individuals he didn't know. So during the actual Wharton TBD, he grounded the group because it happened to be quite a chaotic group that he was paired with. And I believe that that's what helped him gain admission with a $40,000 merit scholarship. The win wasn't definitely charm. He learned to project authority through calm synthesis, the exact, obviously, leadership signals that Wharton is looking for in candidates when they're going through the Wharton TBD. So another element that I would like for you to remember is that the Wharton TBD can't be mastered through memorization. It must be experienced. And that's the simplest way I can put the Wharton TBD experience. The key is simulation. Training as much as possible, once you have the idea, of course, training as much as possible under realistic pressure until composure becomes instinct. That's how you internalize behavior reflexes that can hold under pressure because, again, I mentioned earlier that you are dealing with a lot in the Wharton TBD. You have to be fully present. You have to listen to others. You have to contribute. There's just a lot happening all within 20 minutes. So that is a stressful environment. And there has not been a single client that we have ever helped at Sia Admissions who has said the Wharton TBD was a breezy experience, right? So you have to expect this. One of the things that we do here at Sia Admissions, we actually have launched the Wharton TBD session that replicate the real conditions of the Wharton TBD. This is unpredictable group chemistry, shifting time pressures, and behavior feedback on tone and pacing. When you prepare this way, first and foremost, you can read as many blogs as you want, but it's going to be very different when you experience it. And experience it in an environment that is not as high stakes as the actual Wharton TBD. It's absolutely integral to make sure that you perform at your best during your actual interview. So ways that you can work with Sia Admissions, if this is something that resonates with you, we do one-on-one mock interviews where we can help you with obviously not just Wharton, but other schools. We can help you with understanding how you're presenting yourself, stress testing your ideas, recalibrating when necessary to make sure that you are in alignment in terms of what you actually want to say, but it's also in alignment with what schools are looking for. Then we also have the Wharton TBD. And like I mentioned earlier, it follows the same structure as the Wharton TBD experience. So ours is a simulation, which means a simulation of the entire thing. And right now we are accepting people in the wait list. One can only sign up for the Wharton TBD simulation if they have an interview invite, which they need to present as part of their registration. And then for those who want to just continue to have conversations in a very private group setting, we also have the MBA strategy circle. That's a bi-weekly conversation where a lot of applicants who are going through the Wharton TBD, we come together, talk about their own individual applications and guidance through that, as well as obviously what's happening in the market, how you should think about interview preparation, applications, and a variety of different things that obviously are front and center for applicants. So there are different ways that you can engage with us beyond our YouTube lives that we host every single week. So if you are going through the MBA application process, I invite you to follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn. You will get updates on the posts and a lot of insights that we provide in there. And also you, of course, have an opportunity to engage with us on a more intimate basis through our various different services. So now let's move to questions as we have only 3 minutes per usual. All right, let's go through the questions that have come through the registration. So how do I allocate my speaking time to show leadership and humility? So you want to be really mindful of, actually one of the calculations that we do with our internal clients is we set the stage by essentially equating what are the phases you have to go through in the actual mock TBD, and then allocating time, assuming that there's going to be at least 5 people in the room. So that is how you can actually allocate your time as well in terms of your speaking time. Now, remember, you don't have to speak at all times through everything, right? Speak in calibration in the context of where you have something important to say, where you have an idea to contribute, where you can add something to the discussion. That's when you actually speak. But don't just fill airtime for just making sure that you get the moderator can actually see you. Like, that's not really productive. That's actually counterproductive to your application. So I think that answers all 3 parts of your question. Let's go to the next one. What phrases do I use to invite buy-in from quieter members? One of the things that we always advise candidates when you have a quieter person in the room, actually before that, let's sort of backtrack. Every person in the room with you has an opportunity to share essentially their pitch, right? Before the mock session starts, there's a pitch, and everyone is going to talk about their idea. You should be paying very close attention to that, because that is an element of what you can use in the context of inviting quieter people in the room. You will not know who's going to be quiet during that pitch, right? But if you've taken notes effectively, and by the way, there's no notes on the screen, so you have to go old school, pen and paper, and you will have an opportunity. So if you've taken good notes, you have an opportunity to invite them in by drawing them into, something in their initial pitch that they said that can be additive to the discussion. So that is a way that you can go about inviting someone who is more quiet. All right, that is it for today. We're going to move into a business school comparison series. So we're going to start with the Holy Trinity, Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton next week. So we will be sharing registration links. So definitely join that session and subscribe to our YouTube to be notified when our next sessions and content is shared in this platform. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching.